joining us from Singapore, and it was 8 o'clock in the morning. Or was it 9 o'clock?
9 o'clock in the morning.
9 o'clock in the morning.
So he can go walk on the
Singapore.
beach or something.
Yeah. So our final guest is
Reco
Reco
McCambry.
McCambry.
And he's looking all nice in his
yeah, you got is your background, is it virtual or real?
Oh, it's real. My background is real.
I thought it was real, but I was gonna mess with you a little bit. But you look always professional and everything. So thank you for being on Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about the opportunity.
So Rhonda is going to be asking most of the questions.
Yeah, and I'm excited. The title is a little long, but I'm going to read it anyway. The plan after police reform that will guarantee social justice and progress for the Black community. You have said a mouthful. It's like we know you said a mouthful without even reading the book. Mm-hmm. But can you dive in and talk to us about what the plan actually is?
Absolutely. And the title, is the plan. I guess the after police reform, and the rest of it was kind of meant to be a subtitle. That's why we have everything else in gold writing down here.
Okay.
But the bottom line is what I wanted to do when I decided to write this book, which, between the idea of writing this book and actually putting pen to paper and completing it was about a 45-day process. In May, after the murder of George Floyd, and then after all of the publicity that the Black Lives Matter movement was getting all across the world, I was like, man, this is really an opportunity, to put something out that really get people to focus not only on this issue of police reform, but what I felt was the overarching issues that have plagued the Black community. And that was the things that I talked about in the book. But when you look at the buzzwords, police reform and social justice, of course, we've heard that for several months, month in and month out. And I think it's incredibly important for everybody to understand that rights and social justice are not synonymous. It should be our right to be able to leave home and not have to worry about being shot and killed before we come back home, or not have to, it's our right to not have to worry about being racially profiled just because we decide to jog in a predominantly white neighborhood. Those are our rights. When you look up social justice, by definition, social justice is justice in terms of the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society, right? And so when we all think about social justice, well, everyone should be equal in some respect, but in America, it really doesn't work that way. In America, we live in a capitalistic society, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we have to be able to figure out ways to gain that equity when it comes to the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges. So what this book does is it gives everyone an opportunity to realize what that plan is, to be able to get that equity that we're looking for, and that we deserve.
Okay. Well, police reform is definitely something that people have been talking about since, they talk about it at different times. Normally it's when something happens.
That's right.
Something bad happens. And
they don't have to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, but very little really gets done, mm-hmm. because it seems to get overshadowed by just flashpoints, shouting, them, fighting, physical fighting. It gets obscured, and real change becomes difficult. So you talk about in your book some of the reform ideas that you have. So talk to us about some of those.
Yeah, well, and like I was saying earlier, with police reform being just a small piece of the puzzle. In fact, in my book, I only discuss police reform in one chapter, right? But speaking to that, I'm a Black man who grew up in an American Black community. In fact, I've been very blessed over the past couple of decades as I started my journey of entrepreneurship. But prior to that, I was raised in a single parent home in the housing projects on the south side of Atlanta. You know, so I've seen what both sides of the railroad tracks look like, so to speak. But I think many of us know a lot about what causes the problems we face. But too often we leave the work of fixing it in the hands of the politicians, you know, whether it's in Washington and whether it's, you know, in our local states. You know, there are already millions of great Black activists out there that are doing some spectacular things when it comes to change. I mean, if you look at what happened right here in Georgia, with, you know, us flipping this state blue, that reflects the will of the Black voters in this state for the first time in 28 years.
Right.
You know, and that took the work of hundreds of activists working day and night to solve the problem when it comes to politics. So I think that that's one of the things that we need to focus on when it comes to reform, because, you know, here's the thing. I know that these activists could use some help, and I want you to be able to imagine if instead of hundreds of these activists being out here, every single Black person in Georgia engaged in political activism to some extent. You know, a lot of us have issues at home that we have to take care of first. And I also tried to share what I've learned in the plan as well when it comes to that. You know, some other things when it comes to police reform, I think that many people are not familiar with is what we call CPACs, Civilian Police Accountability Councils. You know, and I discussed this in the plan, you know, where there's measures to prevent police brutality through these CPACs, independent and non-police review boards who decide what disciplinary action and reform measures are necessary when people are killed or seriously injured by police.
So what I'm actually hearing when you're talking is our job is not done because the election is over.
That's right.
And it's not done because we've stopped protesting and we've gone back to our lives. There's a lot that needs to be done in between. For instance, the CPACs. It's just about being more active in our communities, in our cities. So that way we can probably stop police brutality before it happens, or we can push for social reform and not wait for something to happen and be reactionary about it. So I'm thinking that's what I'm hearing.
That's true. That's true. You know, and also you all probably heard that the popular term that's been thrown around, and most of the time it's a negative connotation, and that's defund the police. Y'all been hearing about that, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Which people are finding out now was a bad PR move. It was not actually the correct name for it, is what they're saying, because that's not exactly what they're saying that we should do. People want the police, and they just want to reallocate some of those funds.
That's right. That's
well,
right.
You know, as far as defunding the police, you know, my belief is that in order for the police departments to improve, that they would have to have more money. You couldn't lower the amount and get better policing and better training. And I think they need a lot more psychological evaluation before they get hired. They need to have more scenarios to weed out the people who just are reactionary when it comes to race, where and that would take more money, not less. So it needs to be reallocated more to training, not, you know, then.
Well, I think that's what they're saying, is that the money, a lot of the things that they're putting money into, like for instance, sending people to break up a domestic violence dispute, which could probably be handled by somebody other than the police, because the police know to go and arrest somebody, you know, and that's not always the answer to the situation. So that type of money could go somewhere else, and it could go more toward training or psychological training. I mean, is that kind of where you're going with it?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going. I kind of discuss in the book that it doesn't mean that no one answers the phone when you call if somebody's trying to, you know, break into your house, you know, but it just means there are more and better resources available for situations when maybe an armed security officer with little or no training in mental health or social services is not the best answer, right? I mean, the reality is the vast majority of incidents that American police respond to today are non-violent situations, you know, and situations that are conflicts between neighbors, maybe welfare checks for homeless or sick people and other situations. Well, bringing a gun or combat training just may not be the best solution, you know. So it is reallocating those funds, you know, so we can get individuals who are trained in certain situations to be able to step in and have a more peaceful and just outcome. Because a lot of these police budgets across the country are the same as a small country's military budgets. You know that, I mean, they have compact gear and tanks. I mean, y'all see on TV some of these police units driving down the road in tanks. Like,
Right.
what are they doing? They're literally buying tanks from militaries across the world for their police station. That's absolutely crazy. So it is about that reallocation of funds, and we kind of go through that in the plan, kind of discussing that and debuting a lot of those myths when it comes to defunding the police.
What are some of the other subjects that you address in the plan?
I start off out there, I talk about police brutality. I start off talking about the fatherlessness epidemic. I think it's incredibly important that we all realize that it's something that has really invaded, our family foundation for the Black community since slavery, right? And then after that, obviously, getting into more modern history, the war on drugs, when they came through our communities and, just really started to lock up a lot of our Black fathers. And then, of course, when they introduced the welfare system, which a lot of people thought it was to help us. I always tell people it was to hurt us. Instead of giving us welfare, they should have gave us education. Because at the end of the day, you had a lot of these families where in order for the mother to be able to qualify for this government assistance, she couldn't have the father in the home.
Right.
And that was stripping the father out of the home. And now you have these young boys growing up and not really having a true role model to look at, over 70 to 75%, as the statistics show today, end up, in some type of, jail or juvenile in those situations. And I think the statistics show that 50% of African-American, households are fatherless. In my situation, I grew up fatherless. I didn't meet my biological father until I was 30 years old. My first book is called The Fatherless Father, that actually chronicles my entire life and talks about how I dealt with that whole issue and solutions that we need to present to be able to help to fix our country of that. So that's the next chapter in the book. We cover the fatherless epidemic. And then I go on to talk about financial education, which is something obviously that hinders us from opportunities. As we know, the only way to start building.
I don't know how to handle money. I don't know how to teach my child how to handle money. And then it goes on down and on down and on down.
Right.
And then and I think a guy, I'm never going to forget it. He used to work for the IRS, and he said that there was a correlation between being late and being in debt. Because if you're always late, that means you're late in paying your bills. And when you're late in paying your bills, you're paying late fees. And when you're paying late fees, you wind up paying more money than you need to pay. So that dips deeper into your pocket. And so you wind up being even more in debt. And I've never thought about it like that before. I was like, wow, he's right. If we start practicing to be on time, it actually can translate into how much money is in our pockets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then hardcore education. I think that's one of the things that we all need to realize. One of the reasons why a lot of us are not comfortable with talking about money, because we never really learned how money works.
Right.
Growing up, my mother worked very hard, sometimes 2 or 3 jobs to make sure she can keep the lights on. She taught me a lot about, life in terms of, treating people right, being independent, having strong work ethic, keeping God first. But what she couldn't teach me was how to build wealth. And not because she didn't want to, but she couldn't teach me because she didn't know, and I was blessed and fortunate to find some mentors early on, like I said, in my entrepreneurial career that started when I was 20 years old. They taught me certain things to be able to show me how to build a credit score, how to be able to make sure that I can keep my debt amount low, how to be able to get into ownership, business ownership, home ownership, becoming an investor, all those things we talk about on the elementary level, where when somebody reads this book, we're not only encouraging them to get out here and fight the good fight when it comes to protesting, getting involved in politics, but let's fix our own home first, right? Because there's a huge financial disparity going on in our country right now. The average white American household, their net worth is $171,000. The average Black household, $17,000.
Ooh, big difference.
So
I didn't even know it was that high.
Oh yeah. And check this out. In Boston,
No, I mean for us, I thought it was less than that for us.
Oh yeah, that's average nationwide. But you got areas like Boston, Massachusetts. For Blacks, it's only $3. That's the average net worth in Boston, Massachusetts. $300,000 for whites in Boston, Massachusetts. So there's a huge disparity when we look at this income, and that's simply because no one ever taught most of us how to be able to handle money, why a credit score is important. So we go through those things and talk about asset allocation in terms of no more than 20%, of the money that you're bringing in should be going towards your rent. Somebody says, what? Well, if I can afford 50%, then why should I? Well, because you got all these other areas that you need to address, and how to pay down debt over time, how to start developing a good credit score, how to go from where you are now, if you got terrible credit, to start improving your credit. So that's something that I've really been passionate about, my entire life, my entire.
What your company is about, correct?
That's correct. I have a financial services company, and we help consumers and corporations build their credit to be able to get prepared for capital. So if somebody's looking to buy their first home or looking to start a business or expand their business or get into real estate, things of that nature, we prepare them for that level, consumers and also businesses. So that's something we've been doing since 2014. So that chapter really has a lot of passion in it and a lot of good information that I've been able to learn over the years.
Now I would ask you, as a person, let's say I'm one of those people who maybe only has an income of $10,000 a year. And you're telling me that I need to save money, and I'm telling you, I don't have enough to save money, because after I pay the rent and feed my family, I barely have enough money to put in the bank. So what do I do?
Yeah, well, you got to start somewhere. I always like to tell people, the first thing you got to do, that if you're paying bills, it's incredibly important that you figure out a way to pay yourself first, right? I don't even care if it's $5. When you talked about earlier, developing certain disciplines is going to help you develop certain results. So one of the first things you got to do is start figuring out a way to pay yourself first. The reason why is because you're the one that's working for the money. A lot of people say, well, if I wasn't getting paid, I wouldn't go to work. And then when I start asking them more questions and I figure out that they're broke, I say, well, you are going to work for no money because you're making the money, but you're giving it to everybody else.
Right.
If you're broke, you're not paying yourself. You're paying everybody else.
Right.
So let's develop a game plan where we can first do that. And if you got to pay yourself $1 or $5, whatever the case may be, let's start that first. And then what we got to do is figure out how to increase our income. What new trade can we learn? What new book can we read? What person can mentor us? What YouTube channel can we subscribe to? You got to learn a way to be able to make some more money, and you got to find a way to decrease the amount of money going out. When you can start doing that, you'll be amazed that over the course of time, how you'll be able to separate yourself from this old person you were to the new person you want to be.
And I'd like to add to that. I think often when we think of increasing our income, we think of trading time for money. And there are so many things that we can do to make money that doesn't have to take all of our time. It doesn't have to take time from our family. Right. I was actually watching a YouTube video today about how to sell digital products. And one of his ideas was to come up with these really nice quotes you can create, and you can put them in Canva and make them look all pretty, and then sell it on Etsy.com. And he showed us examples. These people have just a regular quote on a piece of paper, and they had like 2,000 reviews on it. People were actually buying these. So I think that there are things that we can do. And I'd like to remind people that there are things that we can do to bring in extra money without having to take a lot of time from our families. We just have to be creative.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're talking about with the finances is it needs to be taught in high school.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Because what happens is people, they don't know anything about money. They start making money mistakes, and right after they get out, sometimes before they get out of high school, they form bad habits that are hard to break. By the time they get 30, they're in debt. Their credit score, their credit's messed up. Then they have to start over. Whereas if they can learn it in high school, they can avoid those mistakes.
Yeah, well, see, what people got to understand is they don't teach us this in school by design. Because capitalism only works if there's a population of people that can get capitalized on. And when you don't understand capitalism, you will continue to be capitalized on. When you learn capitalism, then you can start to capitalize.
Come on.
Well, they used to teach some of this in school. I don't know why they stopped. Yeah, the younger generations didn't get it. Yeah, they used to teach it, and they stopped. And now, why is that? I mean,
when you look at the universities, when
who
you look
agreed
at,
to it?
yeah, you know, big business, you know, everyone in the society, because at the end of the day, if everyone could go to high school, then go to college and become employees, then the rich just get richer because they're owners. They're the one who are employing everybody. They don't teach you in college how to start a business. They teach you how to become a good employee. Why? It's because all of the donors at the universities are the wealthy people who own the businesses. So at the end of the day, it's going to be up to us to be able to count on us to be able to figure out how do we educate ourselves and how do we uplift and motivate ourselves to be able to get to the next level. It goes into the next chapter of my book. It's called The Entertainment and Education Connection. And I talk about in that chapter, whatever entertains us, trains us. Okay? Whatever entertains us, trains us. When you look at our generation, I believe that, you know, since they couldn't force us to stay away from places or force us not to vote or force us not to be in a situation where we had opportunities, they just decided, let's put it in their music. Let's figure out a way to poison their minds so they won't have to worry about, so we won't have to worry about them going out and becoming smarter to start businesses. They'll just listen to this garbage music all day that'll tell them to treat their women less than. They go out here and buy these gold chains and all these, you know, fancy cars. And I'm not saying that, you know, gold chains and fancy cars and, you know, nice clothes, you know, we shouldn't wear those things, but we shouldn't wear those things if we don't have some type of ownership. You know, if you don't have 6 months of your of savings in the bank somewhere of all your expenses for the next 6 months, you shouldn't be out here buying gold chains and Gucci. You know, like if you know, if you don't
it's
own,
true.
But I got
It's true. Yeah,
however,
music took a turn. I'm not sure what was it, the 90s when it took the turn.
That's
I
right.
think it was the 90s. When they started poisoning the young people. You know, there's a saying that you can tell what a society's future is going to be like by listening to the music that they're listening, and that's any culture.
That's right.
In any culture.
Well,
and they started selling it to us, not as much to other people. You know, the country music didn't turn like that.
Well,
rock didn't turn like that.
You don't hear country music bragging about how much money they have and the type of
No, they don't. They don't.
Drugs.
They tell stories.
You know, I mean, everything like
it was us that they put that in our music industry. The industry that was targeting Black people.
That's right.
Changed, started selling these negative and nihilistic messages, unfortunately, and putting beats to them. They put beats to them, and you know, sometimes when I hear people's loud music in their cars, I'm like, this is like somebody beat me up. You know, it's like cussing and just hard language.
And that's intentional. That's
I agree.
That's a part of their business plan. You know, and it's up to us because it's okay to be able to enjoy and appreciate the arts, right? Some people are truly talented, but some of the music they put out is truly garbage and is used to further suppress any type of talent that could come out of our communities.
So how do we change that, Reco?
We have a fiduciary responsibility as leaders to be able to step up, and individuals that have the power and the voice to be able to let people know what the deal is.
Yeah,
and that's what's in this book.
The part about it, Reco, is that they wouldn't be selling it if it weren't sellable, if it wasn't selling. You know, they continue to push it because we continue to buy it.
That's right. That's right. Because it's again a part of a perpetuated narrative that we've bought into as a community. That's where it has to stop. You know, that's why I call this the plan, because this obviously you could talk to plenty of people who went from nowhere to somewhere, that if they took some time to put the pen to the paper, they can come up with some ideas to help our community turn the corner, right? You know, but this is just the blueprint. And the more people, and also there's a workbook that's associated with this. So I don't just present ideas, but I present a way for people to be able to document their whole process so they can get to the finish line. So
where can we find this book and this workbook? Because right now you have the comments blowing up. I'm gonna tell you.
Theplanafterreform.com. That's theplanafterreform.com.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you're looking for Reco, because your name's not showing up on the bottom, the Nove corporate. So his name is Reco, R-E-C-O, and his last name is McCambry, M-C-C-A-M-B-R-Y. And Rhonda is going to type that in the comments.
I just did.
Okay.
And
So
there's
people
the
can
website too,
also find it.
RecoMcCambry.com, RecoMcCambry.com.
Okay. All right.
I just type that in, yeah, so they can find me there as well.
Okay.
But yeah, you
Yeah,
know.
you typed it into the Zoom. These people on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, they're on Facebook.
Don't worry, I put it in Facebook for you.
It's in there. Yes, we put it in there. And let me see. Some of the comments are, someone said they needs to start in middle school to set the foundation, and that's probably true because I remember, was it 5th or 6th grade, where we pretended like we had a bank account. That's why I said we used to do this stuff in school. Our teacher had us. We went on a field trip to a black bank, and after the field trip, we pretended like we were opening a bank account. And I mean, we learned that, and I think it was 5th or 6th grade. So you children, they can learn that, and they pay attention to the habits of their parents. So if you're overspending, buying stuff that you can't afford, you got bill collectors calling you that you're dodging, you know, your stuff is getting repossessed, your stuff is getting cut off. Children are aware of this, and sometimes they'll start doing the same thing only because they don't know any different.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, my daughter started her first bank account because of a program that my sorority hosted back when I was in Belgium. What we did was we hosted ABC's a finance class for teenagers, not just teenagers, but for kids as well. And during that class, I brought guest speakers in to teach them how to use coupons. I brought in a guest speaker from the community bank who taught them about saving money and even gave them opportunities to open bank accounts if they wanted to. And then they also learned just basically how money worked. And I believe when we teach these things to kids when they're young, they'll start to value money more. But it's, you know, it's a hard fight when you're fighting against these songs and the love of hip hops and everything, where they're throwing money around and they're bragging on drinking Cristal, and you know, these kids can't afford no Cristal.
Yeah, and in the videos, the cars they're driving, they're not even their cars.
And they don't even own these cars. They rented the car.
No, right, for the video. You know, so it's we need to have it more in schools, because a lot of parents don't know. And I don't know if it may be some of our social organizations may need to come in. Your books are great, and that's giving us a plan, but I'm saying you have to have some people on the ground.
That's right.
And it might take our nonprofits helping or something.
These books could be used kind of as a
tool.
These are books that we need to be given to our young people while they're still young, because what we're doing when we teach adults, we're trying to untrain them on some bad habits they may have. But if we try to get them before those bad habits develop, by getting books like yours to our young people while they're still young, they can change their mindsets before they get older.
You know, and one of the things that they'll find in this book is there are a lot of historical evidence of why our communities look the way they look. And I give examples of, you know, Black stories, of success stories of individuals that were able, you know, to succeed and do great things. So it's not only an inspirational piece, you know, but also at the same time, I mean, it's an action plan to be able to figure things out for themselves. So that's why I was talking about earlier, like when it's called the plan, that's what it actually is, right? And it's an opportunity for everybody to kind of get on one cohesive page and forge forward to make this thing happen. Y'all heard it first, right? Actually, not first, maybe about third, right? You know, but I'm telling you, this thing is going to grow. This book is going to go across the globe, and it's going to change lives. And I just appreciate the opportunity of being able to be here with y'all tonight to share this.
Well, we have a comment here from one of our regular viewers, and I think it's a great way to end the night. She says, "It sounds like an interesting read." This is Teresa Russell. She says it sounds like an interesting read, and the workbook has sealed the deal for her. She wants to thank you, Reco.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
And it's good to know that there are people in the, I don't know how old you are, I'm just gonna guess around 30. Am I guessing correct?
39, yes, ma'am.
Oh, 39. Oh, you're almost 40. Okay.
Oh, man, they just made me feel bad.
Well,
I
you
should
know,
have said 29.
but it's good to know that there are people that are taking these issues, you know, to task, that they're putting action out there to reach those behind them. So, and those among them, you know, because we, you know, there's lots of help that needs to go around. Well, we're a couple of minutes over our time for tonight. And so we really appreciate you coming on, Reco, and go to recomccambry.com. And you can probably get all of this other information there too.
Right. So you can also go to the chat. We've put both of his websites in and the name of his book.
Right, on the Facebook comment section. So we appreciate you very much, and Happy New Year to you, and all success with your financial company and everything you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for the opportunity again here tonight. Good luck, and God,
thank you for
bless
the
you
great
all as well.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this week. I do want to announce our guests for next Tuesday. We have a really nice lineup next week. We have Max Rodriguez, who is the founder of the Harlem Book Fair. He's going to be with us. Barbara Jo Williams, she's a best-selling author and an editor. She has many books, and she's a prolific editor. So those of you who may be looking for an editor for your book, Barbara can talk to you about that. We have Simone Kelly. She writes about supernatural stories. And then we have Sharon Elliott, who's an author, a coach, and also an editor too. And she has a literary agency. So we have a really great lineup next week, as we always do. And until then, we want you to support African American literature, which means buy books by Black authors. And if you can, buy them from an African American bookstore, because the more money that we circulate, we can help keep our bookstores open. We've had a lot of them closed because of COVID, but we want to try to keep the ones that are open lasting, so that once we come out of this pandemic, they can be thriving and succeeding. So that's all for tonight. And I'm Gwen Richardson, and I'm out, and Dr. Rhonda is out too.
We appreciate my doctor, okay? I'm claiming my doctor.
That's right. Claim your doctor. Claim it. Because if you go to school that many years, you should. That's,
amen.
You know. So everybody, enjoy your evening. We'll see you next week. And that's all on Black Authors Matter TV.
Bye.